Yeah, absolutely. So, when my oldest son was 17, he was diagnosed with a serious mental illness called schizoaffective disorder. And in the few years after that, he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. And it was a difficult journey. It was a lot of ups and downs, fear, waiting for the next shoe to drop, just a lot of unknowns, a lot of scary times, a lot of times that I almost lost him to drug overdoses. There were times he was suicidal. He was in and out of the hospitals and treatment centers. And, when he was first diagnosed, I wasn't prepared to deal with that. Childhood and early teen years was pretty normal. He played sports. He was a happy child. He was always close with his other brother and his sister and me. And life changed when he was diagnosed. And it took me some time before I could live my life without being on this roller coaster with him, like without, just being afraid to go to sleep. But, I would get a call in the middle of the night that he was in the hospital, that he had overdosed. And because I got those calls, I had those scares so many times. I have a chapter in the book called I Almost Lost Him several times. And so I had to learn how to have peace in my life and to not live in fear.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Living the Next Chapter podcast. Now, if the name on today's episode sounds familiar to you, if you go back to episode 34, my guest is returning to the podcast. Yay! We're now celebrating a book that was discussed way back in episode 34. It's now real. It's here. We can see it on the camera, right? It's right there. The book is real. Debbie Gail Zane is with me today, and the book is out, and I'm so excited. Debbie, welcome back to the podcast. Nice to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back. Thank you for having me as a guest.
This is so cool. So back in episode 34, we were talking about a book that was in process, and you're writing the book, and you're pulling it all together. Now it's a reality. You got it in your hands.
I do.
Amazing. Yeah. Well done, by the way. You did it. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How does it
I'm
feel?
excited.
Does it feel good?
It feels so good. It feels amazing to finally hold it in my hands from, going through the writing process to the editing to the design layout and everything. And then to finally receive the physical book feels really amazing.
Okay. I like that. I like asking. He's amazing. He's a great, amazing connection with your son. Take me to the day when the books arrived and you open the box for the first time. Take us there. Explain to what happened. How did you feel? Do the whole thing. Come on. Tell us.
Oh, yeah. So I remember, it was a Saturday right before I launched my book. And I kept checking the FedEx or the UPS to see when it was delivered. And as soon as it was delivered, I was like running to the mailroom to get the book and then running back. And then, opening the book, and I had tears in my eyes. It's been just such a process after losing my son. And then I know he was right there with me the whole time I was writing this book. And, a lot of the memories from it flowed from him overnight. And just to hold it in my hand was just such an exciting and really emotional experience. I was literally crying happy tears. It was, and then of course I was like calling and texting family, friends, my daughter, my other son, like my book is here, calling people that were really dear to me and holding up my book over FaceTime and showing them. And yeah, it was really very exciting.
Again, going back to episode 34, if you haven't heard Debbie's interview back then, I would love for you to go back and hear that, as well as listen to our episode today, because you'll hear all the excitement about writing the book. And now you get to experience it as an actual tangible thing you can hold in your hands. What a full circle moment. It's really, really cool for me as a host to have you back. And so kind of take us through, after recording episode 34, when you were writing the book, anything kind of happened after we talked and as the book was being written that kind of changed, or adapted over time while you were writing?
I think when we did ours, it was like early last summer. So it was almost a year ago. And I was definitely still in the writing phase. I wrote the book rather quickly, though. The writing part only took me 6 months. But the editing part was really long and the publishing part was long, but the writing was pretty quick. I think back then it was there's not a whole lot of changes. I had the inspiration and the ideas and the organization and everything for the outline basically just kind of flowed to me all of those sleepless nights after losing my son the beginning of 2022. And I really stuck to that outline. I really felt like it came from my son. This is how the book is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to go out into the world and to help other parents going through a similar journey. And so I really stuck to that. And I just wrote a chapter at a time. And I think when I did finish, I went back and then I finally, they say, don't edit your chapters while you're writing it. Like they say, they advise you. Otherwise, I feel like you'll never move on. You'll just keep going and going. And I learned that, especially during the editing process, I learned that I could keep changing things. And I had to kind of refrain from doing that too much. Because you can kind of always change your own work. But so I think I finished writing at the end of August, and then the process of figuring out an editor. And I had written a book proposal earlier in the year, and used an editor for that, and she was wonderful. But I ended up going with the editors that were at the publisher, which was Balboa Press, Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. And
Nice.
So they had editors there, and they gave me a discount, and I went with a big editing package there. And so there were several rounds of editing. So that took probably another 4 months of just the back and forth, giving it to them, and then the first round and them sending it back with recommendations, and then me working with it and then sending it back and doing that with each round. And so that was definitely a process. I felt, I really enjoyed writing it. And so the first time when I gave it away to editing and I didn't have anything to write, it was really hard. It was because I was really still grieving the loss of my son. And I think writing the book helped me a lot. And so it was like a part of my day every single day. And so to give it to the editor and not have it back for at least a month was really hard. And so I missed the days of writing it. And then I guess I'm trying to think. I think maybe the end of January is when the book design process started. So we finished editing and we went into book design, interior, exterior, front cover, back cover. And that was actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Nice. So back in episode 34, we really went deep into the story behind the loss of your son and those days and moments, and as a parent, how you lived through that trauma and all of the things that kind of happened in there. But for those who haven't heard episode 34 yet, Debbie, can you kind of give us an overview of what happened in your family with your son, and so that we just kind of have some context as we kind of roll through today? I'd love to not have people assume they understand the story, but for people, new listeners to the podcast, to understand a little bit about you and the impetus behind writing this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So when my oldest son was 17, he was diagnosed with a serious mental illness called schizoaffective disorder. And in the few years after that, he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. And it was a difficult journey. It was a lot of ups and downs, fear, waiting for the next shoe to drop, just a lot of unknowns, a lot of scary times, a lot of times that I almost lost him to drug overdoses. There were times he was suicidal. He was in and out of the hospitals and treatment centers. And, when he was first diagnosed, I wasn't prepared to deal with that. Childhood and early teen years was pretty normal. He played sports. He was a happy child. He was always close with his other brother and his sister and me. And life changed when he was diagnosed. And it took me some time before I could live my life without being on this roller coaster with him, like without, just being afraid to go to sleep, that, I would get a call in the middle of the night that he was in the hospital, that he had overdosed. And because I got those calls, I had those scares so many times. I have a chapter in the book called I Almost Lost Him several times. And so I had to learn how to have peace in my life and to not live in fear. And so I did find that at some point. And I also was able to maintain a really close relationship with him. And when he was 26 years old in January of 2022, he passed away. And that was the second hardest time for me. The first hardest time was when he first came to me about being suicidal when he was age 17. The next time that was the absolute hardest is losing a child. And the one thing that really spoke to me after losing him in the first few months was reading other people's memoirs who were going through the loss of a child. And I later extended that to just the loss of a loved one. And that helped me so much. And it helped me to feel connection with other people, because I didn't know anybody in my daily life that had lost a child. And so I think my idea with this memoir is to have that connection for parents that are going through a mental illness or addiction or both with their teen or adult child, so that they don't feel alone, so that they can read this and know that there's other people who go through this process too, and to see that there is hope for peace. There is hope for not living in fear. There is hope for happiness and finding your purpose. And that's the other thing that really helped me, was kind of finding my purpose. And I didn't realize until after losing my son. So I have a chapter of that, of after his loss in the book, after losing him. And I speak about the things that were helpful to me in the beginning months. And one of them was really finding my purpose. And my purpose, losing a child just made me rethink everything, like rethink my whole life. Like, why am I here? Why am I on this planet? What's the purpose of my life? And it's just a weird, really strange process that I had never gone through before. And what I came up with is that my purpose is to help other parents or other families, other loved ones of children with mental illness and or addiction, because it's really difficult. And I think it's not as, a lot of times I feel alone because it's not as talked about. Like, I feel like mental illness, addiction, it's come a long way from the past, from when my son was first diagnosed, but I feel like it's still not talked about as much. A lot of people keep quiet. And I feel like, at least for me, when I was going through it in the beginning, I would look around at other families and everybody looked normal. And I felt like there was something wrong with me as a parent, and it's really hard. And so my purpose is to help these other parents. And so my book was actually part of my purpose, which is why it was just so amazing writing it. And also I had started coaching back in 2018, and I kind of shifted my coaching to helping parents. And I started a Facebook group, free Facebook group for parents of children with mental illness and or addiction. And so it's really my passion to be able to help other people and to help them to not feel alone, to help them know that it is possible for them to find peace, even if their child is on this up and down roller coaster, which happens quite a lot. And so I talk about that in my book. So yeah, I really, it's kind of been a journey for me.
Yeah. So talk a little bit, Debbie, about the ripple effect of a loss like this with your son, how it kind of ripples out into your extended family and then into the community and family and friends. Talk about the effects of what's happened and kind of some of the things that have happened since that you've kind of seen that kind of ripple go out into the community. What's been the response when you lost your son? How did it impact people beyond your personal life, just you as a mother?
I mean, well, beyond me as a mother, it of course impacted my other children. I would say the next most is my other son, and my daughter,
Yeah,
because the four of us were always so close. And of course, it's really hard for them. And I think well, we were always close, but it probably just brought us even closer because
yeah,
just to really appreciate the people that you love and to not take any time with them for granted. Like I remember because we were so grateful. We actually spent New Year's Day with my son who passed away, which was just a few days before he passed away. And we didn't know he was going to pass away, but just to be so grateful for the time that you have with your loved ones. And I mean, I think it definitely affected like my parents and my other relatives as well. I mean, my parents got to see my son, a few times a year. Other relatives didn't as much, but I think that it really impacted people because it's like, it's like when you hear of somebody that you know that lost a child, I think it just makes you think like, oh my gosh, like this could happen to anybody.
right.
And I just want to, appreciate what I do have with my child right now and what I wanted it to do, what the effect that I wanted it to have on others around me, especially like people in my Facebook group, people that follow me on social media, other friends, is that just not to take the moments for granted, that each moment is precious, but to also really make that effort for the relationship. Because sometimes what I found is that parents of, which, children with challenges like mental illness and addiction, the relationship can break down
Right.
and they're waiting for their child to get better, for the relationship to be better. And my message is no, 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 don't wait. Like you don't want to wait. We only know for sure we have now. There's no guarantee for anybody how long anyone's going to live. There's no guarantee of tomorrows. And so living in the present is just so important. So I think that's the one thing that people have realized after this, and or at least if they haven't, I'm hoping that they have, but I think those close to me have.
And we were talking before we hit record that in the early days of the book going out and people having access to it, you're getting some amazing feedback from family and friends. Can you share a little bit about some of the feedback you've heard back from people who have read the book so far and what that's meant to you as the author of the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the feedback I've gotten is that it's such a great read that a lot of people have just read it in like literally a couple of days, like couldn't put it down. Like they said that it just draws you in as the reader, and I share a lot of the moments, a lot of the stories, and I think the reader just gets caught into those and can't put it down. That's what they've said. And they've also, I know for family members, they said it's kind of helped them. Well, friends too, helped them. They know what I was going through with my son all those years, but I think they didn't know the depths of it.
Right.
And so it made them really appreciate more like what it means to be a parent of a child with mental illness and addiction. So I would say that even if it will help parents out there to not feel alone and to have help, that they have hope for peace and how to be able to heal and have peace and have compassion and a good relationship with their child. But I think they could also give it to other family members who maybe don't understand exactly what they're going through with their child, exactly what it's like. So even to gift it to family members, because I know it really, for friends and family, it really helped them see as to what it was like for me.
I picked up on you saying that you felt like your son was with you during the writing process and subsequent to the book coming out. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for you as an author, but as a mother, knowing that your son is really with you in the room throughout the process of writing this book? How does that make you feel? How connected does that make you feel?
So connected. This book has like just been, I feel like it's been the collaboration of my son and I. All the memories and everything that I needed to write this book in the early days were just flowing to me overnight, every night, all the sleepless nights. I'd have to keep something by my bed so I could jot down all of this. It was just flowing so fast of what was supposed to be in the book. And I know that that was all coming from him of, these are the things that are supposed to be in there that's going to help other people. And I remember we learned I had been guided to listen to a Hay House workshop. I had never even thought about writing a book, and I was guided to listen to this free workshop. And then I signed up for the course right away. And in there, they talked about writing the outline. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to organize all of this information that's all flowed to me from him? And the next night, it all flowed in the outline. And the next day, I wrote the complete outline, very detailed, in one day. And so it's connected me. So I speak out loud to my son every night, every day. And I talk about, this is our book, this is our book. This is what we wrote together, because I believe he wants to help others out there. I mean, he was aware of how difficult life was for him. And I also share in the last chapter of my book, which is kind of my path to healing during that first year after losing him. And I share about, I had two different sessions with two different mediums. And one of them was able to give me so much information from that came through her from my son, things that nobody could have.
No.
And it's not written anywhere. It's nowhere. And so one thing she said is like, about this book, and he's just so proud of me for doing this, and that he's right here with me, and that everything she said confirmed to me that it really flowed from him, and that he's been with me for this book. So it's just, it's just been really, really emotional, which is why I brought tears when I finally held the book in my hand.
I know, right?
Yeah, because it was our book.
Okay, so the title of a book is really important, because that's going to bring people to the book and kind of give them an idea of what it's about. Explain the title of your book and why that's the title that you went with for this book.
Yeah, so it's called Finding Peace and Purpose Amidst the Tears. And I titled it that way because there are, in this journey with mental health and addiction and losing a child, there are so many tears, and that's okay. There are tears, but that there is hope. You can find peace in your life, and you can find your purpose, and you can have all these things, even though you're going through this with your child. You can have a really close relationship with your child, and you might not agree with the decisions they make in their life and the things they do. But you can still have that relationship. You can still have peace. You can still have purpose. So it's really important message for me to parents.
So Debbie, there's listeners that have come to this episode. Maybe they heard episode 34 and now they're back to hear and celebrate with you as the book's out now. What is your message to a fellow parent who is living with this right now, this significant loss, and struggling to just get out of bed every day and keep moving forward? They feel hopeless, and they just feel regret. They feel shame. They feel anger, disappointment, all of these things every day, and they're struggling, and they're looking to this book for advice and support, but they're looking for community around this. What is your message, not through me, but you directly to somebody listening? Speak to them directly, and what would you say to them as they try to push forward today when they just don't feel like doing it?
Yeah, I would say you're not alone. I mean, I went through it, and I've learned there's so many others out there. As like I said, I have a free Facebook group, and I found that there's just a lot of other parents going through this. You're not alone, and it's none of it is your fault. And there really is hope. There's hope for peace. There's hope for healing. And I feel like I want this book to be your inspiration for peace and healing, and the inspiration to go on, even in times of tragic loss, and just know you're not alone.
So for you, Debbie, early days, as you were dealing with this as a parent yourself, and the reality of all this sinking in, losing your son, who was there for you in community? Did you have somebody that you went to, or a book or a resource, something that helped you in the early days?
I honestly wish I had like a book like this when son was first like hospitalized. Like the first time when he came to me when he was suicidal, he was in the hospital for almost a month, and that was such a hard month. I wish there was a book like this. I was actually going to Al-Anon, which helped me quite a lot. I had some friends that I reached out to for support. And what ended up helping me actually the most was I learned is service to others. I think this was maybe my early days of finding my purpose, but just not knowing it, but helping others. Because I think actually what helped me in Al-Anon most was the things I did in Al-Anon, such as becoming a group leader, sponsoring other people, volunteering at conferences and conventions, speaking at meetings, leading meetings. So those kinds of things helped me the most. And like I said, in 2018, I started getting a number of certifications, pretty much ongoing each year, in coaching, life and relationship coaching. And so being able to help others. So I feel like helping others, like that aspect, is something that really made a difference for me. But the other thing that really made a difference is things that I read, things that I learned. I learned a lot of stuff from Tony Robbins. I learned a lot of stuff in reading other self-help books, and just being able to know that I didn't need to hang. I figured out behind a lot of the fear in those early days was that need for certainty. And so being able to not prioritize certainty, being able to, Tony Robbins always says, if you make certainty your top need, you're never going to be happy, because it's depending on other people. And if you're depending upon other people or the rest of the world to give you certainty, it's just, nobody has that. There isn't that. And so you have to make something else a priority. And I guess I didn't realize in those early days, but I was making contributing to others higher than certainty. And that's what ended up helping me. So my support, probably the biggest support was Al-Anon, and then doing programs like the certifications for coaching, going to Tony Robbins events. Like, even though those are bigger, larger scale things, I was able to take that information and just kind of use it internally. So those were probably actually my biggest supports. But and the later years, my other two children have been amazing supports. We are all to each other. But, when my son was first diagnosed when he was 17, he was the oldest. So the two of them were younger. So they weren't really supports back then, as they wouldn't be meant to be.
Yeah. Talk a little bit, Debbie, then for the listeners, maybe they're the ones that are struggling. They have the diagnosis. They have the struggle where they're trying to find their place in this world, and they are the subject matter that you're writing about. Yeah. Beyond the family that are impacted by the decisions and what happens with this diagnosis. Speak to the person that is maybe struggling, and from a mother's point of view and an author's point of view, what would you say to somebody that is really just having a hard time finding their place in this world and finding that source of identity and all that struggle they're having that your son was having? What would you say to them?
Yeah, that they're not alone either.
Right.
That and that it's not your fault, that you didn't cause this, you didn't make any of this happen. And and that sometimes it's really hard for parents to understand this, and that's sometimes parents think that the child has more control over how they feel, whether it's the mental illness or the addiction or both. But it's really hard. And to know that you're really strong, actually, because I realized this for my son, is I realized not necessarily strong in the ability to always care for yourself, but the strong in your ability to endure all of this, because I know it's not easy, and I know it takes so much strength to endure what you have to go through. And I feel like this book would be helpful. I feel like it would be helpful for them to read too, so that they don't feel alone and they see because it's gonna take the reader on my son's journey, my journey with him, but they're also gonna see so then they won't feel as alone either. But it also might be helpful for them to give their parents, especially if the relationship with their parents has broken down, or they're feeling bad because they feel like their illness is difficult for their parents. And so I think this can help families. I think it can help the people who are going through the illness and addiction, and I think their families as well.
So one thing I'd like to do, Debbie, is I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk to your community. And I'm talking about your Facebook group in a unique way. Now, you can join up in the Facebook group and you can talk to other families and members and parents and interact that way. But for you to talk directly to your community on Facebook in that group, if they were to listen to you right now, what would you like to say to your community? I think it's a kind of a unique opportunity to talk to them directly as they gather around you in community and support you and support each other. What would you like to say to your Facebook community that might be listening to you today? What kind of words of encouragement do you have for your community?
Yeah, that they're all amazing. I know that I know a lot of them are really struggling, and that's why they're in the group. And I love when they do post anything or comment with questions or help. I love to be there to help them and support them in any way I can, because it's really my desire for them to be able to have that close relationship with their child, and for them to be able to find peace for themselves. And I know several people have reached out to me and said how much my posts and my videos have been helping for them, how much it's made a difference for them in their relationship or just in their own lives of feeling more at peace, and that there is hope, and that if you haven't gotten this book, I really do think it's going to help for you to read that, and just to know that there is, somebody else who's gone through the same things that you're going through, and that it's not your fault and it's not your child's fault, and that there's so much hope, and you can definitely be close with your child, and you can definitely have more peace in your own life.
So we'll put a link to the Facebook group in the show notes for anyone interested in joining up and being a part of the community. And I think when we build these communities online, Debbie, it's kind of nice to be able to address them as a group and say, we appreciate you for being part of this and contributing and receiving as well. And I think that's the beauty of a community outside of having the book, is now they can talk to each other and support each other, even if you're not in the room as the host of the community. I love that kind of interaction that happens.
Absolutely. I love when people post, and I do have occasionally some people like to post. Facebook allows this anonymous feature where you can post anonymously, and some people are more comfortable that way. And I do notice that when people post, others kind of come on and comment, and many times they're going through the same thing. They're going through the exact same thing. So it makes me happy when other people are reaching out and posting, because I want this to be supportive. I want this group to be helpful to parents.
Amazing. I love it, Debbie. Okay, so before we go, I'm gonna get you to give us all the information, the contact information. I do have a question afterwards, and I do that on purpose so that everyone will stick through and listen to the end. So I do have another question to talk about at the end, but can you tell everybody where to find you and where's the best place to connect with you in addition to your Facebook community?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is DebbieGailCoaching.com, and it's DebbieGail coaching.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Debbie Gail and Debbie Gail Coaching, and YouTube is Debbie Gail Coaching. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah, and the book is available everywhere, right, at this point?
The book is available online at Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. Should be, if there's other online retailers that you use, should be on all the Amazons throughout the world, like, Europe, UK, Canada, should be all of them.
Amazing. And I would encourage everyone to leave feedback and a review on the book. Please do it because it does help for others to fall in love with the book as well. So I'm asking everyone that buys the book, and everyone should buy the book, and maybe gift the book as well to another person that might need this and use this in their life. You can do that. You can buy it and ship it right from wherever and send it to their home and gift it to them as well. If this is something that could help them, please do so. Leave a review. That definitely does help all the authors to grow their community and everything. Debbie, for an author that's thinking of writing a book and making it a teachable memoir, which is what you've written, any tips for an author about writing a memoir like you've done? What does it mean for you as an author to write this? And how important is it to capture a story like this to help others? Any tips for somebody thinking about writing a book like you've done?
Yeah, some of the tips that I found really helpful for me was one is to have an outline. So if it's a teaching memoir, you want to have content in there where you're sharing stories. You want it to be a memoir, but you also want to think of how these stories can teach somebody, like what is your message? So, and you kind of, maybe even before the outline, you want to kind of think of what is your core message for the book. So who is the audience and how is your book going to help them? And if you keep that core message in mind when you do the outline and when you're writing each chapter, I think that will help you so much.
Amazing. Okay, Debbie, what's coming next? We talked in episode 34 that this might be the opening the door to more writing. Is there more stuff coming down the road for you? What do you think?
I would definitely write more. This will not be my last book. I enjoyed the writing process so much. But I don't know exactly when it's going to be or exactly what it's going to be. So right now my focus is on this one and getting it out into the world.
You promise to come back if you write anything more in the future though, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. And I love you mentioned that you had family and friends find your episode 34 back when we did it in the past. And that was helpful. So I really appreciate having you on the show. And again, full circle moment, come all the way back from starting to write the book to it's in your hands. And I'm so excited to have you back, Debbie. This is really, really fun for me as a host to reconnect with you as well. And we're going to link back to that episode 34. I'd love if everyone goes back and listen to that as well and get more insight and hear the beginning story of this book being written. But congratulations, Debbie, on the book. And again, I'm so proud and honored to have you back again on the show.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor to be back on your show. I really appreciate it.
It's great. Everyone, please go support Debbie. All the links will be in the show notes, and check out her Facebook group and share this episode with someone who might be going through something really, really tough right now as a parent or as someone struggling. And this could be a life-changing event for someone to get their hands on this book and maybe redirect their course in life or find the support they need. So, Debbie, this is so timely for what you've written, very deeply personal as well, but I know it's going to help many, many people. And I love that you and your son wrote this book together. And that's so meaningful to hear those words. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here. We can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.